Good evening. Welcome to our webinar. I am Robert Lewis, the chairman and a co-founder of SIPAC, the Sino International Professional Advisory Council, or SIPAC in Chinese. Tonight, we're very fortunate to be able to hear from very experienced practitioners from our Thailand member firm, Tilleke and Gibbins, and also from our member firm in India, Khaitan and Co. Both are outstanding law firms with worldwide reputations of excellence, and we're very pleased to have them share their presentations with us this evening. We'll start with presentations from our friends from Tilleke and Gibbons, and we'll start first of all with Chitchai Punsan, and he is a litigator and has extensive experience in dispute resolution. He will go first from Tilleke and Gibbons, and then he'll be followed by Michael Ramirez, who is who assists in major international clients in a range of domestic and international disputes. So we'll turn it over to our friends from Tilleke and Gibbons. Please share your screen and proceed with your presentation.
Thank you, Robert. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining this session on the rules of origin and key customs compliance insight in Thailand. My name is Chitchai Punsan. I am a lawyer with the law firm Tilleke and Gibbins in Bangkok. I am joined by my colleague, Michael Ramirez. I'll be guiding you through some critical updates today regarding exporting to the US and the EU from Thailand. Michael will be talking about the importance of product origin, okay? Let me try to share my screen here. Just one moment. All right, I think I'm sharing my screen.
All right, that if you can also just
Yeah, let me expand that.
Expand it, thank you.
How's that, Robert?
Perfect.
Perfect. Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. Let's begin by addressing the core issue. Following the discussions with the U.S. trade representative, Thailand finance minister announced that Thailand expects to receive the U.S. tariff rates by August 1st. And the rates that we're expecting is that we think, well, the finance minister thinks that it's going to be about 20% rate imposed, similar to other nations in the region, like Vietnam and Indonesia. That's what he thinks, but we don't know. We're going to get there, you know. So that's what happened last week. And this brings to the a crucial point. There is increased scrutiny from both the U.S. and the EU over the past 3 years. You know, both the U.S. Customs and the EU Anti-Fraud Office have launched origin verification request for 15 products and 29 Thai exporters who are subsidiaries of companies from China, basically. And we help some of those clients in those cases. This heightened attention stems from the suspicions that manufacturers from countries facing trade measures such as anti-dumping duties and rerouting their goods through Thailand to illegally claim Thai origin and evade tariffs. So in response, the DFT, Thailand's Department of Foreign Trade, has issued warnings to exporters to confirm their origin, the product's origin before shipment from Thailand. The DFT's investigations have uncovered significant non-compliance. The results are quite telling. 13 out of 29 exporters investigated in Thailand, which is about 45%, and they were found to be falsely claiming Thai origin from their products, and most of the products were from China. That's what they are alleging. The primary method used was importing parts for minor assembly or minimal processing in Thailand. The affected products, let me show you the list of affected products, so far the products that have been investigated by the DFT. There are 8 items, mattresses, mattress springs, aluminum foil, honey, solar panels, electric bicycles. We have assisted clients regarding solar panels and also electric bicycles, and lithium batteries and nails, In the cases that we have handled in Thailand, the Thai customs basically seized the products and won't return it to our client. Basically, they're working so hard on investigating this type of issues. Now let's look at the products that are currently under close observation by both the US and the EU, based on the watch list from the first quarter of 2022. They still use this list, but officially they still announce this list. But based on our conversation with DFT, this list is actually very, very fluid, but they don't announce it. So these are only the products that were announced back in 2022, and our understanding is that, and there are still these products are still under the watch list, although we don't know what the current watch list is. They won't tell us, even though we try to ask. These includes seamless steel pipes, automotive parts, tires for buses or trucks, fiberglass, wooden furniture, and steel or iron pipe fittings. If you are exporting any of these goods, you can expect higher level of scrutiny by the Thai authority. So what is the DFT doing about this in terms of the investigation? The DFT has adopted a proactive two-pronged approach. First, they are actively monitoring imports and exports data to identify any suspicious trade patterns that might suggest origin fraud. Second, this is kind of too far of the products. So our recommendation, given this landscape, what can you as the exporters do to ensure compliance and protect your business? It is absolutely essential that you ensure your product process qualifies as substantially transformed in Thailand. We asked DFT about this. What do you mean substantially transformed? What kind of rules of origin do you apply here? And then they were quite vague about this, but kind of. This is unclear still. This is our frustration when we try to help our client on this. They said a good benchmark for this is that more than 50% of the product's costs based on the bill of materials are incurred in Thailand. And this goes beyond simply assembly. So you must be able to document significant value addition within Thailand to prove it. So, yeah, basically that's what's going on here in Thailand. Robert, should we open for questions now, or should we wait until Michael finish his presentation?
Why don't we do Michael's? Well, let me ask you a question, Chitchai, first. This substantially transformed is, as I understand it, a common terminology that's used for country of origin purposes. So is this left up to each country to define, or will the destination country, for example, the US or the EU, will they also have a rule about what comprises or constitutes substantially transformed?
It should be decided by the US and the EU, right? That because they're accepting countries, right? And then we asked the DFT, what's your approach on this? What is their guidelines to you when you issue the certificate of origins to companies here in Thailand? They told us that they wanted to stay on the safe side, meaning more than 50%. You know, that's their current thinking. You know, they want to show that, oh, we are doing something in Thailand. 50% is more than any FTA. You know, usually FTA is about 40%. That would be acceptable, right? Or even 35%. You know, but here the DFT officials are saying currently they are using 50%, which we thought that's a lot to comply with.
Now, you mentioned that. Oh, please go ahead, Michael.
No, I was just going to add to that. Well, the issuing authorities for certificates of origin certainly conduct an evaluation, a determination under international rules as to what qualifying origin, whether, for example, you have a wholly originating product or one that has been substantially transformed. They're the authorities ultimately that have the power to make that determination. I think what Adi is saying, or what Chitchai is saying, is that you can have a legitimately prepared and issued certificate of origin, but ultimately when you export with those certificates of qualifying origin to a jurisdiction that is circumspect, such as, let's be frank, the U.S. jurisdiction currently, it's very likely or very possible that they're going to take a very, very hard look rather than simply accept the authority of the issuing authority. So I would answer that question by saying both the issuing authority and the exporting country, and then the receiving country, as Kun Adi points out, have a role in this, and increasingly so the country to which exportation occurs, like the U.S., to use this example, has been increasingly scrutinizing issues of origin. And unfortunately, and I'll talk a little bit about it as I begin, China is number one list of targeted countries, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And I was interested.
Go ahead, Robin.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about the types of Chinese companies that are targeted, because some of those products that you mentioned probably are being manufactured or produced by bigger Chinese companies. Some of them would be state-owned, but then some of them look like they might be products manufactured by smaller or medium-sized privately owned companies. Do you have any information about which types of Chinese companies are actually encountering more problems?
Yeah. Well, we've been assisting many Chinese companies manufacturing products here in Thailand. All kinds of products, you know, auto parts, solar panels, Um, for example, furniture, wooden furnitures. We had a client who export wooden furnitures um, to to the US, right? And the DFT issued certificate of origin, and the US side rejected it, saying, "No, we don't believe you." You know, and then in the US, so the US side launched investigation. So we were helping a client on this to prove that all materials were sourced here in Thailand. We showed the video, we showed the factory and everything to prove that these products were sourced and made in Thailand.
Right. Okay. Well,
Mm.
thank you for that. Why don't we just go ahead, Michael? We'll probably have some more related questions after your part of the presentation.
Okay, thank you. You can hear me fine, I take it?
Yes. Perfect.
Okay. Can you see my presentation?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to mention that this presentation, while in part it focused on issues of product origin, and to a lesser extent just highlighting transshipment and the problem or the perceived problem of circumvention, is also kind of piggybacking on what Kun Chitchai has mentioned, which is the role of the U.S. authorities, not just the U.S., but primarily the U.S. Authorities, and their influence on Thailand, and how that influence has shaped the practical actions of the Thai authorities when it comes to evaluating product origin under the applicable rules. So without further ado, let me just move on. I just want to, first of all, highlight what most of us in the proverbial room here, the online room, know, which is that there are real benefits to regional free trade agreements. And Thailand is a signatory to 15. This is not an inclusive, a comprehensive list that I provide here in the slide, but they're a signatory to 15 agreements, 14 of which are active. And those agreements, including agreements with China. So ASEAN China, as well as a specific free trade agreement between Thailand and China. That has been a wonderful tool in terms of developing trade within the region and within between Thailand and China, China being Thailand's largest trading partner. The benefits, I think, are clear, right? The benefits to come directly from these free trade agreements. They provide for exemptions and or reductions in import duties for qualifying products, and whether those are inputs to the manufacturing process or whether they are simply products sold in Thailand's domestic market, there are benefits to these agreements. It also promotes and advances operational and manufacturing bases in member countries, i.e. in this case, Thailand. And when you combine that with other incentives in place in Thailand, such as opportunities to take advantage of free trade zones, etc., there are real incentives to Chinese operators, not only Chinese, our regional neighbors as well, but Chinese and other multinational operators to consider a manufacturing base or other operational bases in this region. And what we've seen in the last number of years is an increased interest and an increase in the number of operations of Chinese entities in this region. So that's wonderful. It also improves access to member country products for consumers, as I've mentioned in Thai domestic market, but also for export to other markets. That said, as Kun Chitchai has mentioned, there is a geopolitical change in atmosphere. I'm not picking on anyone in particular, but it's the reality. There is a change, and those changes have been manifested through threats of trade, wars, however you want to characterize it. It's been manifested in threatened increases in tariffs, ultimately resulting in where we stand today, as Kun Chitchai has mentioned, which is a pause, but something that should happen on August 1st, or maybe not. But in any event, China's behind that. And what I mean by that is a lot of what we see, at least as it relates to Thailand's the threatened high tariffs and then now negotiated lower tariffs, but still substantial tariffs, have something to do with this perception by the U.S. authorities that Thailand is facilitating the inappropriate circumvention in some cases by Chinese entities. The vast majority of Chinese operators and other multinational operators are fully above board and are not engaged in these processes. And one of my functions here, one of our functions in assisting clients, is legitimate Chinese businesses who want to do appropriate business and comply with all rules and regulations sometimes get caught up into this heightened level of scrutiny because of bad operators. That's unfortunate, but that in fact is the environment in which we find ourselves. So what happens with this tariff targeting and the resulting trade uncertainty? Well, clearly it's uncertainty. We don't even know, as we're a week away from August 1st, whether there will be a further pause in tariffs. And this is not Thailand only. This is many, many, many countries. Only a very handful of countries, including China, have negotiated some deals. And even those deals, you can argue, are only partial. They're not comprehensive deals. So not a whole lot of deal making has been done, regardless of the rhetoric that you hear. That leaves us in a temporary pause that may continue, ongoing negotiations, full quotes. And with the U.S. in particular, and other large entities, but primarily the U.S., focused on major global markets like China for negotiation, and some of our regional partners like Vietnam who have reached tentative agreements. But Thailand has not been the primary focus of these early negotiations. As Adi has mentioned, that there have been meetings more recently and there has been progress, but this has been secondary to these earlier negotiation focus of the EU, the UK, China, and even Vietnam. So this focus on China has impacted Thailand and many of its Asian neighbors. Other offices that we have in the region are affected, of course. So there are demands on Thailand, which I think is important. And Thailand is not in a similar position as the Chinese government. Chinese government's in a position of strength. Thailand is not at least in the same sense. And so Thailand is far less able to strike back at the authorities. They have to be cooperative at a large extent. They have to acquiesce to certain demands, and those demands by the U.S. authorities, whether you want to call them demands or cooperative agreements, have resulted in changes in some of the rules, but practically speaking, as Adi has mentioned, in the focus, short term, and arguably in the coming months, we're going to see a continued escalation or focus, because this is a promise that the Thai authorities are making to the U.S. in their negotiated resolution of these tariffs. So that's the reality. We're already seeing changes in how the Thai authorities are focused on the issues of product origin, and we will continue to see that. And Adi has already mentioned some of the cooperative endeavors with hang on here. I'm not getting there we go. Okay. Let me see if I've got it. Tariff targeting. Okay, sorry about that. I had to stall to my computer. I also want to mention anti-dumping duties. They are a form of tariff, or at least for practical purposes. And I mention it because the issue of circumvention is an issue in anti-dumping duties. And many of these anti-dumping duties, while not solely focused on China, have indeed focused on China in certain manufacturing sectors. And Thailand has been involved because the focus on scrutinizing origin for purposes of tariff or exemption qualifying under free trade agreements also extends to avoidance of anti-dumping duties for products who are subject to those duties, product countries such as China or South Korea or other countries. And so this is an issue. It's a form, whether you want to call it, some people say it's not a tariff, but I call it a form of tariff. It's an additional tariff. It certainly is when you think about the the alleged circumvention, or at least the focus that the Thai authorities have on products that are being classified as originating in Thailand. Okay, so let's get to the issue of origin, its role, and its importance. Okay, country product origin is an important thing, as we have mentioned. It's a qualification in most cases for preferential benefits under FTAs. And those qualifications for preferential benefits oftentimes result in zero duties or substantially reduced duties. So a very, very important qualifying tool. It also serves as confirmation of product origin to qualify for country-specific tariffs. So non-preferential, but still important. And then, of course, probably the most important, at least from our perspective as dispute resolution, customs, and trade attorneys, is that it's important for avoiding, as a tool to avoid claims of liability for false declaration. So this is an issue with Thai customs, and now, as Kun Chitchai has mentioned, Thai authorities are being put in a position where they're having to be more aggressive, or they've chosen to be more aggressive. And this issue of transshipment, the using shipping of goods through one country to avoid tariffs, or the use of a third country to make it appear as if the originating country is to avoid duties, and then simply improper product classification, transshipment, circumvention. Understanding that Thailand is the origin country you want to use, and there are certainly documented numerous cases, and the result has been this aggressive treatment from the U.S. government and through tariffs and other measures to ascribe to legitimate Chinese operators this presumption that you are transshipping or circumventing rules, when in fact that's not the case, but it does create headaches for legitimate Chinese operators. Country rules of origin. Okay, so these are specific country rules of origin. They actually set a criteria used to determine the nationality of goods, right? To apply for reductions or exemptions and tariffs, as mentioned. To qualify, it must be an originating good, right? The country in which a product is wholly produced or manufactured. And there's really two areas of evaluation here. One is, and it's usually the easiest, which is a product, a good that is wholly obtained or produced in an exporting country. So if you use the example of Thailand, the easiest example are agricultural products, right? These are chickens that are bred in Thailand, corn that is grown in Thailand. Most agricultural farm goods are, it's not too difficult to show that they are wholly obtained or produced in an exporting country. The vast majority of products, however, goods that we talk about and serve our clients with, are those that are not wholly obtained, but somehow are undergoing a transformation that, as Kun Chitchai had mentioned, results in a substantial transformation under the rules. And substantial transformation is something that is new. It can be nuanced. It's very detailed. We don't have the time to go through it, but it ultimately it results in a change in the tariff classification. It can change in the regional, it can result a change in the regional value content. So there is real value added, not nominal value, but real value added. And there are mathematical formulas. And then there's a process rule, which is there are substantial processes that are undergone that result to qualify a goods as originating in Thailand because they have then qualified as substantially transformed. Generally speaking, this is more than just assembly. Again, it depends on the product, the good, the manufacturing details, the process. You can have a certain percentage of component goods that are imported from China, for example, and then have them manufactured and predominantly assembled with other goods that may come from other regions or specifically in Thailand that do in fact result in a substantial transformation. But under the current environment, there is scrutiny. And so it's really important that you make sure that you're qualifying under the applicable rules for substantial transformation. Okay, these are just some quick and dirty graphics that I'll fly through, but this is essentially what I've just outlined in the form of a graphic, right? You have origin, you have wholly obtained, and then what we're mostly dealing with is a substantial transformation through value added, substantial value added, a change in classification or in process, or quite frankly, it could be multiples. So these are essentially what you're looking at. And most of the analyses that we're involved in are as helping clients communicate with Thai customs on issues of substantial transformation. So I will talk briefly about the certificates of origin, but ultimately, if you have an assessment that there is qualifying origin by the authorizing authority, it doesn't necessarily mean that the country into which exportation occurs is going to accept it. Unfortunately, there's more scrutiny now, and there's a possibility where you find yourself before customs authorities in the U.S. or in Thailand having to defend the calculations or the determination of product origin. And so this is really, really important that it's done properly and that it's properly documented. So product origin scenarios, these are just, again, quick and dirties. If you imagine that country C has a free trade agreement with country D, and components come from country A and B who have free trade agreements with country C, but not with country D, then you want to see some sort of a substantial transformation in country C that qualifies it as originating from country C. So that's one example where you have some tariff values that are different, but clearly country C is a more beneficial tariff rate, and therefore there is an incentive to consider conducting a substantial transformation in country C as opposed to country A and B. And there are more detailed scenarios, but that's it in a nutshell. So what about the qualifying authorities? Kunati mentioned it a little bit, and I mentioned it in a Q&A, but basically it's a process through which a recognized authority will review and qualify an entity, a product, as originating, in this case, in Thailand. It involves a registration process, a pre-verification, which involves submission of supporting documentation on cost and manufacturing, etc. It's very important that this be thorough and complete, and that this information be retained. And then there's a post-verification process. It's discretionary, reasonable doubt by the Department of Foreign Trade or relevant authority. And as Chitchai has mentioned, Kunati, there is a lot more scrutiny in here, and you're seeing a lot more aggressive attention, particularly to the highlighted, delineated goods that the U.S. authorities have issued to Thailand. So it's not that they can't conduct post-verification for goods that are off the list. They certainly do, but the real focus is on these listed goods. And I might also point out that a complaint by a competitor to the authorities could also result in post-verification evaluation. So that's something that is also a thing that manufacturers or exporters and importers need to be aware of. Do you have competitors who are concerned about origin of goods? And if so, you should be aware of that, or vice versa. If you're concerned about a competitor in the marketplace who might be circumventing the rules, you do have a right to submit a request or a letter of complaint to initiate an investigation. Okay, obtaining COOs. Just a couple of quick notes about preferential certificates of origin and general certificates of origin. Preferential certificates of origin really have to deal with seeking preferential treatment under free trade agreements in most cases, right? And so this is where the Department of Foreign Trade is exclusively involved. In general certificates of origin, the Department of Foreign Trade, the Ministry of Commerce have exclusive rights over goods on their surveillance list, even if they're not seeking preferential COOs. And so Chitchai has mentioned that. Other non-listed certificates of origin have traditionally been the arena of authority for the Thai Chamber of Commerce and the Federation of Thai Industries. And every country has their authorizing authorities, but these two entities have vast experience in evaluating and understanding the issues of origin and substantial transformation to then submit and issue certificates of origin, which become part of the importation package of documentation. Okay, mentioned by Chitchai, there is origin scrutiny, right? These are enforcement trends. These are in part pushed by U.S. authorities more recently, but it's also an internal push with an understanding that there has been a problem of circumvention. What we have over the last few years is increased trade with China. Some of it is driven by the domestic market in China, but a lot of it is driven as the continued operational advantages to being in Thailand and on the existence of the free trade agreements with China. So U.S. has targeted specific products, as we've mentioned. There's been a focus on the issuance of certificates of origin, which is one reason why the Ministry of Foreign Trade has taken a much more active role for certain products, and certainly more active role in its due diligence when it comes to establishing origin for goods who are seeking preferential treatment. And then you've got the Ministry of Commerce, which has implemented measures to address improper issuance of certificates of origin. And these have included, amongst other things, again, Addie mentioned it, on-site inspections, focus on production costs, and an acknowledgement that it will become that the ministry will be much more aggressive in becoming the sole authorizing entity for the listed goods. So these are the changes that we've seen only in the last year, less than a year, and what we anticipate, particularly in this tariff environment, to continue. So this is something that our clients need to be aware of. It's the environment in which they work. So a last couple of notes here on origin best practices. The list could be very, very lengthy. We don't have enough time, but it's important. It's important, and anytime you're dealing with customs authorities, whether they be in Thailand, the US, or other areas within the region, you want to identify all and understand the applicable rules for both preferential and non-preferential origin. You want to accurately apply the criteria for determining origin, and you want to make sure that it's done properly. Understand the rules. Very, very important. Documentation. Maintain detailed and accurate records, and I can't underemphasize or overemphasize this a month. Document retention. Many companies have document retention policies that do not encompass the entire prescription period like Thailand. So if you're talking about or misdeclaration of duty under Thai law, it is you're talking about a 10-year prescription period. Oftentimes document retention periods are only 5 years, and so it's really what the applicable prescription or statutes of limitation periods are in a jurisdiction, and maybe adapt your document retention policies accordingly. Obtain a robust origin management system if possible. Ongoing training and understanding of import-export operations. This may be through the use of outside counsel or experts. This is really critically important. And then understand in developments impacting trade agreements, customs rules, and enforcement trends. And as we can see, over just the last year alone, there have been substantial developments that have affected this jurisdiction and some of our ASEAN neighbors. So lastly, it's also important, and cost is always a consideration, but consider effective use of experts and outside counsel. You can't engage us, you can't engage other outside non-legal customs experts for every little matter. It's just not cost efficient. But doing so for the important stuff, or doing so periodically, I think is critically important to limiting liabilities and making sure that you're getting ahead of it and not being lumped in with those few Chinese companies who are circumventing the rules. Thank you very much. I know that we don't have a lot of time, so I'm both myself and Kun Chitchai are more than happy to take questions offline, should anybody have them, and we can respond via email as well.
Yes, thank you so much. I do have a couple of observations and questions. Thank you, first of all, for this excellent presentation. And we will be providing, through our various channels, we will be providing your contact information so that people watching this live or recorded will be able to connect with you. But I wanted to just make one observation. That is, when you were going down the list of best practices, it seemed that that is pretty much similar to just in any type of compliance system. You have to understand the rules, you have to have a process, you have to have training, you have to have document retention. And my other observation relating to that is that historically, Chinese companies, when doing business outside of China, have not always had robust systems for creating and maintaining documentation. To ask you a question, are you finding that Chinese companies are improving in terms of their compliance management in this area, or do you think it's still a continuing problem?
Single out Chinese companies, despite the fact that we're on a SIPAC presentation, I would say it remains a problem. There are two parts. I've seen steady improvement, yes. But this is steady improvement, not only with Chinese companies, but even Western companies have had this issue, particularly when it comes to document retention. Oftentimes what happens is, for customs related disputes, and Kun, Addy, and I have been involved in many of them, where there is for whatever reason, because we have these rotations of government officers, I'm going to be honest, sometimes there are incentives to dust off a file and conduct an inquiry into past importations that have had no issue for 5 or 6 or 7 years. It's it's reasonable, I shall say, for a company, a Chinese company, or even Western companies to say, oh, okay, we've qualified, we've gone through this process, it becomes rote, there's nothing to worry about here. And then all of a sudden, year 7 or year 8, you've got a criminal investigation or a civil investigation that portends potentially high fines and duties and VAT. And you've got people who have left the firm, you have document retention issues, and right. Even though you are in the right, so to speak, in terms of your support for qualifying origin, you have a evidentiary concern. And so, I know it's a long-winded answer, but yes, we've seen some improvement, but across the board, I'd like to see more improvement, not only from our Chinese partners, but from our Western partners as well.
All right, thanks very much for that. Thanks again for this excellent and timely presentation. So if I could invite you to stop sharing your screen now, then we can introduce.
Let me see how I can do that. Let me just close it.
So very happy now to introduce Atul Pandey from Khaitan and Co., which is, in our opinion, the leading law firm in India. And Atul is a good friend who's participated in many of our programs, and Khaitan and Co. is, yeah, you need to stop sharing. Well, you're still sharing.
Am I still sharing?
Yeah, you need to stop sharing. Find stop sharing there.
Oh, okay, there you go.
There you go.
Hang on. How do I stop? Let me see here. Have I stopped?
Not yet. Not yet.
I apologize. Hang on.
In the middle, you'll click on the share button and it should give you a pop-up.
Atul can just start, and then Michael will be kicked off.
Oh, well, let's try that. I just tried, and we have to have Michael stop before anyone else.
I'll leave and come back. How about that?
Okay, let's do that. Let's try that. Okay, all right. Now, Atul, welcome you to start sharing your slides. You can provide a further introduction for yourself. And one thing I would be happy for you to mention is the very extensive list of Chinese companies that you and your colleagues at Khaitan and Co. have been working with over all of these years. And so I think that's, at least I would suggest you could start with that, as well as an introduction to the firm, and then go directly into your presentation.
Sure. Thanks a lot, Robert. And very good evening, good morning, good afternoon to all the
And
audience.
can you expand your PowerPoint to be full screen? Thank you.
Sure.
No, you just go back to where you were and then go to slideshow or down to the bottom. Go to the bottom right where it shows a projector screen. No, not there. The other side, the other right-hand side of your screen. Okay, over a little bit to the left. To the left, not down.
Yeah, is it
Okay.
better?
No, not yet. Go to the top where you see slideshow. Go to slideshow, and then do from beginning. See if that does it.
Okay, perfect. Thanks a
There you
lot.
go. All right.
Yeah, good evening, good afternoon, good morning to all the audience. My name is Atul Pandey, and I'm partner with Khaitan and Company. And thanks, Robert and SIPAC, for giving this opportunity to talk about the aspects of doing business in India with respect to Chinese companies. And to a large extent, this will also be applicable to all the foreign companies who are looking to invest in India. But my presentation is mostly confined to what Chinese companies should be thinking about when they are looking to invest in Indian market. What are the trends we are seeing with respect to Chinese companies and how it is playing out in light of the geopolitical scenario. So without taking much time, I will just introduce about my firm. So I represent Khaitan and Company, which is one of the oldest and largest law firm. It's a tier 1 law firm, full service law firm. And our capabilities extend to mergers, acquisitions, helping foreign companies setting up their operations, also on the competition, antitrust, tax issues, intellectual property, regulatory, and government practice is also one of our strong practice area. In addition to that, we represent all the large Indian businesses group as well as foreign investors who are already present in India. And obviously, those large investors who are looking to invest, we do represent them on a regular basis. As I mentioned, it's a full service law firm, but in addition to that, we have 7 offices through which we cover the entire country. Our biggest offices are in Mumbai, Delhi, Chennai, Bangalore, and Kolkata. But in addition to that, we also cover smaller satellite towns through satellite offices. We also have international presence in Singapore because Singapore being one of the important jurisdiction for making investments in India. So therefore, we have an office to help the companies who are looking to invest in India through Singapore. As I mentioned, it's a full service law firm, which means we have more than 1,200 lawyers, 300 partners, and obviously very well representing to all the international companies. So that's in a very brief nutshell about the firm. As I mentioned, this presentation is about all the investment opportunities in India, things which Chinese companies should be looking at and keep in mind when they are looking India as an investment jurisdiction, and some of the cases and the observations based on our experience. We represent large number of Chinese companies, all the top Chinese companies one can think of in some way or the other. We are helping or kind of guiding them with respect to their investments. Now, investment opportunities in India. So I will just take 2 minutes. As we all know that recently we have crossed 4 trillion GDP. So now we are the 4th largest economy in the world, expected to be 5 trillion in next couple of years. And with the GDP growth of 6.5%, we feel that in next 3-4 years we should be the 3rd largest economy as well. Private equity venture capital investments have been the second highest, which had crossed approximately 56 billion in the year 2024. Private VC exits had been 26.7 billion, up 7%. So which means that the opportunity to exit is also there from an Indian market perspective. Being the third largest ecosystem from a startup perspective, as of 2025, we have 122 unicorns, which are valued at 363 billion. Startups have raised approximately 12 billion in this particular financial year, in the financial year 2024-25. We received around 82 billion US dollar in this particular financial year, which has just gone in 2024-25, which is an increase of 14% from the previous financial year. In addition to that, some of the sectors, most of the foreign investment is coming, not just from Chinese, but otherwise also IT and IT, healthcare, chemicals, automobile, infrastructure, renewable. So these are the sectors where most of the investments we are seeing. In addition to that, India is the second largest consumer market and one of the largest by 2030. Young population, English speaking population, everyone is using multimedia. So that also kind of gives us an edge when it comes to foreign investment. And the most of investments, obviously investments are coming across country, but some of the top FDI destination in India would be Maharashtra, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu. And I will just explain Maharashtra being the financial hub for India, because Mumbai is located in Maharashtra, which is financial capital similar to Shanghai. Karnataka being the IT hub, we call it as Silicon Valley of India. Tamil Nadu is a port city, and that's where most of the automobile companies manufacturing takes place. And then some of the other states, for example, Telangana, Jharkhand, Rajasthan, where we see a lot of infrastructure companies, solar, renewable, and these kind of companies are basically making investment. Some of the key investor indicators and growth trends which we are seeing: reduced cost of doing business. We have a single window mechanism, which means that you can apply on a particular portal, which we call as National Single Window System. And through that, you can basically upload all the documents and you can get multiple licenses through one single window system, which makes process easier. Then the second is obviously we have a strong foreign exchange reserve, which provides insulation against any adverse geopolitical development. There's a lot of investment for, there is a lot of push for private investment, specifically in the infrastructure projects, renewables and all. And government has taken certain initiatives. For example, they are promoting manufacturing in India. Some of the incentives which they have announced is basically creating a special economic zones, lower stamp duty, cheaper land. So these kind of incentives government is providing in strategic sector, and services obviously as a sector is the key driver for export growth. So that's where the economy is heading in, and that's what this slide covers. Now coming to overview of India-China relationship. China continues to be the largest trading partner with India. Obviously, our bilateral trade has crossed approximately 113 billion in last financial year, 2024-25. China invested around 250 million in the first quarter of this particular calendar year. Obviously, it is not significant because of geopolitical tensions, but having said that, now things are picking up and we see investments getting increased over a period of time. As I mentioned, India is going to be projected to be the third largest economy by 2027, which also means that a lot of foreign investments, M&A activities, merger acquisition activities are taking place. India has also invested, a lot of Indian companies are showing a lot of interest in Chinese companies as well as jurisdictions in various states in Chinese, specifically in form of joint ventures or strategic investment. And we see, approximately investment has been made from India until March 2025 in China. Now, obviously, India, as I mentioned, being one of the fastest growing economies, so they also require Chinese technology. A lot of interest being generated specifically in electric vehicles, telecommunications, electronic components, infrastructure, renewable. So that's where a lot of interest and joint ventures are taking place between Indian companies and Chinese companies. Lastly, China remains a vital supplier for our industrial goods. So therefore, we see a lot of investment activities, trading happening even in relation to that also. Now, some of the key investment sectors for Chinese companies, that's where a lot of Chinese companies are active. For example, technology, as I mentioned, young population, everyone using multimedia phones, etc. And obviously one of the largest consumer market. So technology is where most of the investments we are seeing. Some of the large companies like Amazon, Walmart, all of them are super active. Even Chinese companies had been super active in this particular technology space. ByteDance, TikTok used to be one of the largest player, capturing almost 70% of the market before it got banned in 2020 because of geopolitical reasons. But technology is one sector where most of Chinese companies were quite active. Automobile component, so SIAC, MG Motors, they are very active. Then in addition to that, some of the other BYD is quite active in India. Obviously, they don't have a manufacturing facility yet in India, but they do contract manufacturing through the local manufacturer. So automobile is also one of the most important sector where we see Chinese investments and interest and activity. In addition to that, electronic components. So a lot of mobile manufacturers, electronic companies, which are basically, doing contract manufacturing. So they are doing a lot with the Chinese companies. For example, Xiaomi, Vivo, Oppo, these kind of companies are doing their manufacturing in India through the local contract manufacturers, and they capture almost 60 to 70% of the market share. So they are the largest, being Xiaomi and Oppo being the largest mobile manufacturers in India. Energy and renewable is a sector where government is actually actively pushing for investment, and Chinese companies specifically, some of the Chinese state-owned enterprises are also quite active in this space, and some of the strategic privately owned companies are entering into joint venture with some of the large Indian companies, which are in public domain. So that's again, a sector where Chinese investment is getting quite active. Healthcare and life sciences, it's a sector where a lot of private equity investments are taking place, and therefore it is also kind of a area of, or a sector where there's a lot of Chinese interest. For example, Fosun had invested in they did one of the largest private equity investment in a company called Gland Pharma. Then there are other Chinese companies also which are active in this particular space, either through their funds or through strategic joint ventures. Warehousing and logistics, again, because of the infrastructure push, the way government spending has increased through public-private participation, warehousing and logistics is also a sector where we see a lot of investments coming. Consumer retail, e-commerce, as I mentioned, because India being one of the largest, lot of retail e-commerce activities are also taking place, and a lot of companies are already active. If you see in the diagram snapshot, you can see all these companies are already active in their respective space. For example, Amazon, Google, Tesco, Walmart, all of them are extremely active in Indian market. I will not take much of time because I have already highlighted a key FDI destination, but in a very brief nutshell, this is the map of our country. You see Delhi NCR right at the top. That's where most of the automotive, engineering, and multinational companies are located. Delhi is similar to Beijing, so all our central government and ministries are located. World-class airport, metro, road infrastructure. And obviously, it's a market where most of economic activities are happening, specifically on the infrastructure growth side. Gujarat, it's a port city, traditionally stronghold for chemical, petrochemicals, and fertilizer industries. Two of the biggest, largest Indian groups actually originated from Gujarat, the Reliance Industries and Adani Enterprises. Then in addition to that, obviously, our Prime Minister also comes from Gujarat state. So there's a lot of push for his home state with respect to infrastructure activities. And obviously high quality ports and roads. Maharashtra, as I mentioned, this is the most economic hub for India, highest gross state domestic product, large number of SEZs, government has been giving a lot of incentives, both the state government and the central government, good quality manpower available, good infrastructure, roads and ports. Again, Karnataka is a southern state. It basically it's IT hub. We call it as IT hub or Silicon Valley of India, the Bangalore. Most of the IT companies, companies in technology and retail and these kind of activities, they have their base in India. Tamil Nadu is a port city. All the manufacturing, a lot of manufacturing activities take place, and state government is very friendly when it comes to private businesses. So, and Rajasthan and Telangana, they are the upcoming states where a lot of activities are happening, and government is basically incentivizing private investments, and a lot of foreign companies are actually active in these states, including Chinese companies. Some spotlight on Chinese business engagements in India. Obviously, this is a very small list, but this is just a snapshot. Ant Group, which is Alibaba. So they have made one of the largest investments in a company called Paytm, which is basically Indian version of Alibaba or WeChat or whatever you call it. So that's where Ant Group has been active. They made investments, and then obviously once Paytm had gone for IPO, so they made some exit, but still they are a minority shareholder. But Ant Group is quite active in India when it comes to payment system technology and these kind of activities. Sheen, which is a e-commerce player, they entered into a large strategic partnership with Reliance. Reliance is the largest Indian group. So, and this is into the retail sector. So very recent investment and this collaboration had taken place. BBK Group, which is basically Oppo, Vivo, Realme smartphone. They are very active. They also have active joint ventures with respect to manufacturing in India. So they capture almost 60 to 70% of the mobile segment in India. So they are very active. MG Motors, the automobile company, they entered into a strategic joint venture with JSW, one of the large Indian group. MG Motors means SAIC. And they have also just set up a manufacturing plant in Gujarat. Then Asphalt Engineering Technology, Energy Technology has signed a technical collaboration agreement with one of the largest battery manufacturer in India called Exide Industries. So these are some of the large investments which had happened in last few years. But in addition to that, there are a lot of other companies which are quite active. For example, BYD. BYD is already basically doing a lot of export into the Indian market, and they are also kind of trying to work closely with the government for setting up their manufacturing plant and a joint venture in India. In addition to that, there are a lot of companies who are basically licensing with the government to set up either their manufacturing plant or their EV plant, etc. in India. So these are some of the names, but yes, there are other companies who are active in different business segments. Now, I will be talking about what is the law, how the legal and regulatory challenges pose for Chinese companies when they are looking to make investment in India, and some of the guidance and things which Chinese companies should be considering when they are looking to make investment. So most important for any foreign investor, including Chinese investor, when they are looking to invest in India is basically the sector in which they are looking to make the investment. It is very important because every sector is guided differently. There are different rules and regulations with respect to that sector, but also from a licensing perspective. So very important to understand the sector, what are the rules, regulations, related laws. Land title diligence, in case if some company wants to invest and acquire, say, land for setting up plant or factory. Also important to understand how to structure your investments in India, basically which is the jurisdiction to decide for making investment, because from a tax perspective it brings efficiency. Some of the tax treaties with certain jurisdictions are more favorable. For example, we see a lot of investments coming into India is from Singapore or Mauritius or Dubai because of the favorable tax treaty with these countries. So important to have taxation and jurisdiction to be identified. Compliance with Indian exchange control laws are most important, because we have seen, due to geopolitical reasons, a lot of Chinese companies had faced some issues because of non-compliances with respect to exchange control laws. So it is important to make sure that you are complying with foreign exchange laws, or how the valuation is happening with respect to your investment. It is important. Also important to see, there should not be any kind of assured return in case if it is an equity investment. If it is a debt investment, then it has to be in compliance with external commercial borrowing regulation. What is most important for Chinese companies is to comply with Press Note 3. So in 2020, Government of India issued a notification saying that any investment coming from a country which shares land border with India is required to be first approved by Government of India. So that notification is called as Press Note 3. Now, it requires that any investment, whether it's a direct investment or indirect investment, in both cases, approval from Government of India will be required. So direct investment means investment coming from China and Hong Kong. Hong Kong is also covered within the Chinese definition or territory. Indirect investment means investment which is coming from a jurisdiction other than China and Hong Kong, but the ultimate beneficial owners are basically located in China and Hong Kong. For example, a Singapore company making investment into an Indian company or wants to set up an Indian company, but if Singapore company is owned by Chinese shareholders or ultimate beneficial owners, then it will require approval under Press Note 3. It covers all kind of approvals. So whether the investment is 1% or 100%, whether it's a majority, minority, even control. For example, if you have majority directors on the board, but your investment is say less than 50%, then also Press Note 3 approval will be required. And in the next slide, I will cover what is the broad process. But this is what is covered under Press Note 3. What is not covered under Press Note 3? Which means that if Chinese companies have already made investments before this notification came in 2020, for example, existing Chinese companies, their investments have been grandfathered, which means that they don't require a fresh approval for their existing investments. Similarly, if the Chinese investor wants to fund an Indian company by way of debt, which means they want to give loan to their Indian subsidiaries, so in that case, no government approval will be required, which means that they are not covered under Press Note 3. With respect to other countries, for example, if investment is coming from US, Singapore, and so long as there are no Chinese beneficial owners, no approval will be required. So they are not covered under Press Note 3. Now, how Press Note 3 approval process works. And as a firm, I would also like to highlight, we have helped several Chinese companies. And when I'm talking as recent as yesterday, we have obtained 3 approvals for Chinese investments in India for very, very large strategic investments. So, but let me quickly, in a brief nutshell, tell about how the approval process works. For any investments into India from China or Hong Kong, as I mentioned, we require Government of India approval. We have to do a filing with DPIIT. DPIIT is an agency controlled by Ministry of Commerce and Industry, Government of India. So we have to do an online filing. In the application, we have to provide details of the Chinese investor, the Indian company, or the Indian joint venture partner, if there is any, who the beneficial owners are, who the directors are. So it's more like a KYC requirement to provide details. Then in the application, we also provide how the investment is going to help the Indian economy. What are the economic benefits from that investment? For example, if the investment is coming into manufacturing, we actually explain to the government how this will help the local economy, the sector, employment generation, and the FDI assets. So economic benefits have to be highlighted. We also need to make sure that the data, if any, flowing from India to outside, how that is being managed, because there was a lot of concern around data sensitivity, data localization, and storage. Next is minority investment is preferred. So Indian government's thought process is that if Chinese companies entering into India, they should basically get into a joint venture, they should work closely with an Indian party, and that joint venture should be a real joint venture. It should not be like the Chinese company is actually controlling by becoming a minority and through some side arrangement, or by controlling the board, or through veto rights they are controlling the company. So very important to have a right joint venture, and if it's a minority joint venture, then it is more preferable, and that's what the trend we are seeing. Sectoral capabilities, it is important to have investment in those sectors where there are challenges in India. For example, there are no big local players. So in case if these are strategic sectors where government wants investment, there are no strategic players in India, government wants to develop that sector through Chinese technology and strategic guidance, then those sectors are basically preferred. Regularly, regulator engagement is also important, because as a firm we work very closely with the government, so it is important to have face to face, give comfort to all the regulators and the authorities as to why this investment is important from Indian perspective. Now, recent trends, what we have been seeing for Chinese companies making investment, we see a lot of strategic joint ventures taking place. And that's how Chinese companies are navigating the Indian market to set up their manufacturing base or to kind of enter into this market, because otherwise under Press Note 3 approval becomes difficult. But if you have a joint venture partner, then it becomes easier. Then Press Note 3 preference. Chinese, in certain sectors, government is not allowing investment from China, and that is not just China, even other jurisdictions are not preferred. For example, defense, telecommunication, data processing, these are sectors one should avoid because it's difficult to get approval in those sectors. Indian government's think tank, policy tank, we call it as Niti Aayog. They are basically promoting and trying to convince the government authorities that up to 24%, if Chinese companies want to invest either directly or indirectly, they should not be required to take any approval. Which means that if a Chinese company is looking to invest up to 24% and government is actually actively considering that, and most probably if there would be a change, then obviously up to 24% no approval will be required. Also, there is a shift from equity to supply and contract manufacturing, because the Press Note 3 approval process takes a lot of time, 6 to 9 months. So what we are also seeing, Chinese companies entering into strategic collaboration through technology license agreements, supply arrangements, service arrangements. So these kind of activities are also taking place. And obviously, specific structures are also created so as to make sure that the technology is protected, IP rights are protected. Then a couple of case studies. Well, as I mentioned, it is important for Chinese companies to make sure that they are in compliance with, because we have in the previous presentation, we have discussed about compliance as an issue. In India also, we have faced certain issues with respect to Chinese companies, and specifically things got worse due to geopolitical reasons. And what we have observed is in certain cases that there were basically lack of compliances on the exchange control side. For example, in one of the cases, we have seen the Enforcement Directorate investigated Chinese company because they felt that without bringing in any technology in India, excessive license and royalty fees was taken. So they made this allegation that there was a siphoning off of the fund. The argument which were presented by us was that there is no restriction on license and royalty fee. There was a proper benchmarking, and this was not with the related parties. So therefore, there was a backed audit report, etc. Courts had got convinced, but the idea of this particular case study is that it is important to have your compliance in place. Make sure that, whatever money which you are taking out, because in India, there is no restriction for taking out the money. If you have made investment, you can freely take out the money in form of dividend, interest, license fees, royalty, and even if you want to exit your investment, there is no cap or any restriction. But it is important to have supporting documents, and that is what government keeps on looking when you are actually making remittance from India. So compliance is the key, and in this particular case, we have actually convinced the court, and accordingly court granted relief. But initially authorities felt that there was a bogus technology, and without bringing in any technology, money had been taken out. Now, with respect to press note 3 approval, which I mentioned, we have obtained several approvals. Important, and in some cases, what we have faced is government raised multiple queries. So it is important to clearly highlight, your business model, how it is basically going to help the sector, emphasize on the benefits which are accruing to your through your investment, ensure that the joint venture partner should not be basically a local small player. It should have a credible and no shady background. I'll also ensure that in case if the local joint venture partner is the majority partner, then the control should be with them. Submit all the documents in advance, prepare the application in a robust manner, regularly engage with the regulators, and accordingly, based on that, you can streamline successful approval. That's what we have actually done in those cases. Some of our clients, Reliance Industries, JSW, Mahindra, some of the Chinese companies. So you can see China Unicom, ByteDance, Tencent, CITIC Capital, Fosun here. So these are some of the large companies we do represent. This is just a snapshot. And my background, I lead the China desk of the firm, and I regularly work with Chinese companies. I'm a cross-border merger acquisition lawyer. My job is to help foreign companies navigate Indian market successfully. So that's in a very brief nutshell, and I'm happy to take any questions.
All right, thank you so much, Atul. Obviously, I do have some questions. You and I have communicated on many of these issues for a couple of years now. And a couple of points, when we talk about Press Note 3 or PN3, that really has been the major obstacle for Chinese investment. And I'm really pleased to see that, again, we see additional improvement in the overall environment. I remember last year you came to China with one of your colleagues and you made a presentation at a training program that we organized, and you talked about how you had been able to successfully help Chinese companies go through the PN3 approval process. I also remember early on that we had talked to you about this ultimate beneficial owner requirement. And I think we talked specifically about how sometimes Chinese companies hope that if they add a couple more layers of non-Chinese corporates in the ownership line, that they don't have to go all the way back to confirm that in fact it is ultimately owned by Chinese parties. But my understanding is that in India, they will trace all the way back until they find the ultimate owner. Is that correct?
That is correct. Absolutely. So there are two ways of identifying this. Say if you take the position that if you create multiple layers, then you are not required to disclose. You are still required to disclose, because the moment you make investments in India, your first port of check would be the bank through which you will be sending the money. The bank will be actually asking question who your beneficial owners are, who is sitting on the top. If you make a false declaration, then every year, as per our Indian Companies Act, you have to actually disclose who the beneficial owner is by virtue of your corporate filings. And there, if they find out that on the top there is Mr. X, who is a Chinese sitting, then they can say that your entire initial investment was in violation of foreign exchange laws. Right. So you are right, Robert. We, ultimate beneficial ownership from an Indian context, in the Indian context, is to be seen as who is sitting on the top and controlling the company.
But also, when you're looking at some of these investment structures, there are different ways to assert control. Now, what you've talked about is an improvement recently that it looks like the trend is that for Chinese investors in most sectors, if you are not exceeding 24% equity ownership, that probably is going to be approved. You'll still have to get approval, but that's already an improvement over what it used to be. It was uncertain a couple of years ago, and some people were not sure if it was 10% cap or 25% cap or 24% cap, but it's already an improvement to say 24%. If you're under that, then you're probably going to get approval. That's already a major improvement in the environment for Chinese companies investing. But we know that there are different ways to exercise control. You can't have control of the board. But what about management positions? Can Chinese companies who have a minority stake, can they appoint certain managers in the company?
So they can. It is actually a contractual arrangement with your joint venture partner. In case if you in your joint venture arrangement with the Indian party, if you are allowed to appoint or nominate your CEO, CFO, or Chief Operating Officer, then obviously you can actually take control of the company. But having said that, government do look into all these aspects.
Right.
Specifically, if you go for approval. In one case, government had said that because the CEO is a Chinese national, and very interestingly, the CEO was a Hong Kong national. Actually, he had obtained a Hong Kong passport, but he was a person of Indian origin. So no Chinese connection except for the fact that he obtained citizenship of Hong Kong. And because of that, government said because he's a Hong Kong resident, so he requires security clearance, and therefore it will require press note 3 approval. So very important to answer to your question. Yes, it is possible 4% equity to appoint a CEO, CFO, or CEO, or a KMP, key managerial personnel. But it may, from government's discretion perspective, it may still have to kind of go through the same security clearance process if government desires to, or in its discretion. Yeah.
Now, another way that a minority shareholder can assert higher level of control is through having pre-approved business plans and then having extensive veto rights for the minority. Will the government look at issues like that as well?
Now they have become smarter. They also look at the veto rights, whether it's a positive control, negative control, how you are basically, and that's why I mentioned very clearly that it is important to have a credible joint venture partner. Because if you have a shady joint venture partner, then you can obviously, it kind of creates a red flag within the government system, because government feels that, because it's not a credible joint venture partner in India, hence you can exercise whatever control you want to exercise. But what we do in some cases is through certain side arrangements or through, say, certain rights, I would say, we try to see if some protection can be given. We don't call it as control, but downside protection in case if some unforeseen event happen.
You raised another important point about a credible Indian local partner. What I have found over the years, and I think this is something where the trend is more positive now, but in the past, we had a lot of Chinese companies. If they saw that there was a local ownership requirement, what they would do is they would go find an overseas Chinese who was a citizen of the target country and have that person hold the shares on behalf as the local shareholder. I've always taken the position that even if the government doesn't apply greater scrutiny to that, and they do in this case, I would imagine, but it's also not good business practice. It's better business practice to have a strong local partner. If you have to have a JV, you need to have a strong local partner that has credibility not only within the target country, India in this case, but also with other multinationals. So I noticed that you were talking about Shein with Reliance Group. Well, Reliance Group is going to make sure that they are a good partner for Shein, because if they do something that somehow takes inappropriate advantage of Shein, well, their other foreign partners will see that and worry that they may get similar mistreatment. So that's always one of the big advantages of having a strong local partner as your partner in a JV.
Right. And the second, not just Reliance, we have also seen, for example, Tata entering into a insurance joint venture with AIA Group, which is a Hong Kong-based group. We have also seen JSW, which is another large group in India. They entered into a strategic joint venture with MG Motors, the SIAC Motors, what you call it. So we see some of the large Chinese companies getting into a strategic joint venture with big Indian groups. And that's how they are navigating the Indian market.
And what you were saying about majority, minority rights, veto rights, et cetera, appointment rights to management positions, when you're dealing with a very sophisticated, large Indian company, they will be very sophisticated in how they approach these issues. And so the Chinese companies in entering into those joint ventures have to be similarly sophisticated.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that gives a lot of comfort to the government, because these large companies, because of their large presence in India, they are very particular about compliance, corporate governance issues, and that gives them credibility, not from a regulatory perspective, but also in relation to, all the activities which they are taking and the licenses which they have from the government.
My last question goes to another point that you raised in your excellent presentation, and that relates to licensing fees or technical services fees, etc. We all know that when you have some restrictions on the level of foreign ownership in a joint venture, that sometimes you're trying to find other channels to be able to recover more of the economic benefits. And one way that has traditionally been used is to provide licenses for the trademark, if that's appropriate, may not always be appropriate in India, but also for technology, for training, for other services, etc. And as you say, those fees are not capped by law, but it could attract a certain level of additional scrutiny because everyone knows that that's another way to work around the caps on the foreign investment.
That is correct. That is correct. And that's why our advice would be that the technology fees, license fees, or whatever fees against which you are taking out money from India, it has to be properly benchmarked. There should be proper documents or agreements. It would always be good to be backed by a auditor's report or accountant's report. And you do your regulatory filings and compliances accordingly. If all these, and that's how we have actually convinced the court in the case study which I had quoted. So we had seen that in some cases, even though there was no technology, but because this is freely open to take out the money without having any kind of services at the local level, without bringing any technology, money had been taken out in many cases. So that's why government got alert, got educated, and investigations started. And this is not just confined in relation to Chinese companies. They also investigated even Indian companies and the Western companies as well.
All right. Well, thanks so much. Very much appreciate your update. Things seem to be improving. And of course, we're always very happy to be recommending our contacts throughout China that when they need legal services in India, that they contact you and our good friends at Khaitan and Co. I'd also like to extend my thanks to Chitchai and Michael from Tilleke and Gibbins. Similarly, everything in Thailand and many other jurisdictions in Southeast Asia where we do not have a separate exclusive member firm for the country, Tilleke and Gibbins is always our first port of call. And we've had such great experience on behalf of all of our friends across China and working with both firms. We thank both of you, for all of you, for participating in tonight's webinar, and we look forward to seeing you next time. And with that, we'll say good night. Thank you again.
Thank you, everybody. Robert, appreciate it.
Bye.
Atul, take care.
Thank you. Bye. Take care.
Good night.